Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of CookieCast. Today on CookieCast, it's the Laces Out podcast, our NFL podcast. Just me and my glamorous co-host, Mr. Williams, this week. No guest. We have guest picks. We can still secure the guest picks. No guest. I've gone guest blind, I'm afraid. There will be guests in the future. Special guests, very special guests, but just not this week. Before we start, please do consider like, share, subscribe and comment. Leave a review where you can leave a review. The big one, the one that helps the most, where you can, share that podcast. Share it around. If you know somebody, anybody that likes NFL, send this podcast in their direction. They will thank you for it. Right, let's get started. Here we go. This is CookieCast. Laces out.
Off mic, off air, off piste. I was just bitch moaning and complaining about my fantasy football team. Apparently, not one, but both of them are on fire, and apparently nobody told the owner. So, yeah, as I said, there's little I can do because the fire extinguishers are also on fire. So we're not going to talk about fantasy football, but we are going to talk about actual egg-shaped football of an American flavour. And if you put all those pieces together, you will find that you are here on the Laces Out podcast, coming to you from the CookieCast Network. Whew. I'm here. My co-host, Mr. Paul Williams, is here. And if you watch it on YouTube, you'll see, yep, he's dropped the ball again. He's not got a guess. Now, as I've been attacked on the internet for this very subject, I will say this. Getting a guest is not easy when you don't try. I've been burnt in the past. I've been burnt recently. And honestly, like my fantasy team, too many burns makes for spoiled broth. That's not how that saying goes. Paul Williams, how are you, sir? How is it riding the tip of the fantasy football sphere?
Yeah, I'm pretty good, and unfortunately, for you, unfortunately, but obviously, sadly, I don't have the same fantasy issues, as it were, with yourself, as I find myself 6-1 and tippity top of our large league. So
it's fine. It's fine. I lost to your fantasy nemesis at the weekend. Not by a lot. Not by a lot. It was enough to lose. That's the main point. I think the other main point would be that I would have comfortably won that game if I'd have put one of my bench players in. So I had no comment to make on that at all whilst I watching the game. I didn't mention it. I didn't say, did I put him in this week? None of that. No mention whatsoever. As I watched the blimp that was this week's team go down in flames. Anyway, that is enough about fantasy flipping football. And really, I think we should probably get straight into last week's actual football. Doing a little bit. No, we are put into a position where we are having to do something different with the stats this week because the person who does the stats has decided to do something different this season, and I don't love it. But you got to roll with the punches, and we're gonna try and muddle through this week's stats and see how it sits. Because maybe it is a format that works. There are elements, hilarious elements that are better done in a certain way. So maybe it's going to work. We don't know. Before we get to the stats, what does the book tell us?
Well, interestingly enough, week 7 brought with it an actual in-studio guest. Mr. Stuart Woodmansey pulling his second guest slot of the season. He made his picks. Andy made his picks. I made my picks. So last week there were just the Bears and the Cowboys on bye. So that left us with 15 games in total. The last of the UK games. And of those 15 games, with 9 of the 15 selections correct, it was the guest, Mr. Stuart Woodmansey. 9 out of 15 selections, only good enough for third place this week. The teams that let him down were the Saints at home to the Broncos, the Falcons at home to the Seahawks, the Texans at the Packers, the Vikings at home to the Lions, the Raiders at the Rams, and the Chargers at the Cardinals. So no point for the guest, which means it's either myself or Mr. Cook getting the win and the point for this week. With 10 of 15 selections correct. It's Mr. Andrew Cook, ladies and gentlemen. Sadly, he could not back up his 14 of 14, his clean sweep from last week. He dropped the bag, as it were, with 5 teams letting him down. Those 5 teams being the Saints at the Broncos. Sorry, the Saints at home to the Broncos, the Falcons at home to the Seahawks, the Texans at the Packers, the Vikings at home to the Lions, and the Chargers at the Cardinals. Which means that getting the win this week is myself. Now, obviously, Andy got 14 of 14 selections correct. Going into the Chargers at Cardinals game, I was 14 of 14. Sadly, I did have the Chargers to beat the Cardinals, robbing me of my perfect clean sweep of 15 out of 15 and leaving me with a paltry 14 out of 15 selections correct. Yes, that was very disappointing from my perspective, as I didn't get to put a little star next to my score, sadly, in the book. But I do take the point this week, so it moves me on to 4 points for the season. Andy on 3, the guest yet to get off the mark. But Andy is in the book with 3 and an asterisk because he did get that clean sweep. So in the event of a tie, he will take the win. Yeah, couldn't really believe it when I was going back to the book. I was like, I had it for a second week in a row. I was just thinking, there's no way that he's got all of these correct. And yes, there was no way I got all of them correct.
In golf terms, I'd have given you it for the cat. Obviously, I know we'll probably get into a little bit more, but you mentioned the Lions-Vikings game, and fucking Lions team, man, is just... Oh, I want to see them. I want to see them go all the way. They are a delight to watch.
They are. Obviously, the Aiden Hutchinson injury on the defense side is going to be massive and will sort of affect them further down the slope. But the rest of the team just looks stellar. And I think I said last week on the podcast, it'll be interesting to see how the Vikings bounce back after their first loss. So obviously we will see that this coming week.
Yeah, it's briefly mentioned in the stats to do with a different stat for a different team. Can't imagine who that might be. So that's the games. Now, I know that 14 out of 14 defaulted me to, unless I decided to edge my bets and pick a different, which obviously I hadn't, I took an instant clean sweep on the side bet. I am terrified to think about the fact that if you got 14 out of 15 right, probably not going to look too good for the side bet. And you can guarantee, here's what I'm guessing. I'm guessing I picked the 4 games I got wrong as my side. I got all 4 of the fuckers right.
Well, I'll put you out of your misery right now, Mr. Cook, because my 4 selections did not include the Chargers to beat the Cardinals. So
There's 4 out
that
of
should
4.
tell you what you need to know. So I've got 4 out of 4. So I had the Bills, the Colts, the Jags, and the Rams as my 4 teams.
Yeah. There we go.
Mr. Cook had the Commanders to beat the Panthers. 1 out of 1. The Steelers to beat the Jets. 2 out of 2. The Eagles to beat the Giants. 3 out of 3 so far. Will he get the clean sweep? With the Bengals beating the Browns. Yes, he will, ladies and gentlemen. He got 4 points. Both of us got 4 out of 4 for the second week in a row.
Ooh.
The side bet looking pretty spectacular on the numbers. So, after 7 weeks and a maximum points total of 28, Andy finds himself on 20, and I find myself on 21. We're doing pretty well this season.
Honestly, I can say this, and I've said this for we've only been doing this part of the podcast for there's a third time, second,
either 3 or 4, yeah.
Obviously, that typically the first year we did it was like to the wire. It came down to the last week and was like, fuck. Obviously, this one's shaping up to be an absolute corker. I think I comfortably shit the bed last year fairly early on. So look out for that this season. Although I will say this, week in, week out, you look at the games and you're like, oh, man, the first pick's a no-brainer. The second pick, I can probably muddle my way through. Pick 3 and 4. This week, whilst I was doing the predictions, I was like, this is hands down the best week to do the side bets. You look at some of the percentages for the picks, it's like 98%. I can work with those odds. So yes, look forward to the side bet this week. So, book is firmly paused at this point in time because obviously we covered last week. We'll go on to talk about this coming week. I believe that's all the London games done and dusted now, which, for one of the better way of putting it, is probably a saving grace, because I think a lot of people who have been previously or anything like that have said that this has got to be the worst year for London games. Some of those games were just woeful. What it does bring us to is talking about some stats. So I alluded to this earlier, which was obviously we're still going to the same stores. We go to the Stats Mistress, sacrifice a goat, and ask very nicely get some stats. She goes and talks to her mate, Nate Davis of USA Today, and says, what have you got in the way of some stats? Our good friend Nate, this year he's clearly trying a new format. As I said, not a fan. Simple as that. I'm not a fan. I believe it makes plating the stats more difficult as well. And I know from the week that I actually did it, and comparing it to when I did it donkeys ago, it was categorically you're doubling up for things like numbers, for example. So this is what I would call a numbering system. The other thing, it just buggers off towards the back of the stats. It's like, oh, I'm done with that. So bear with us. We'll see whether this is a thing. it might be time to call Nate into the office if this is going to be a regular thing, and maybe part ways. But for now, let's just see how it rides. So, NFL Week 7 stats brought to us by the Stats Mistress and by Nate Davis. Obviously, I'm being maybe somewhat negative, but obviously we do appreciate both parties pulling those stats together. So, number one stat starts at number 0, because 0 is the number of touchdown passes Chiefs Patrick Mahomes and 49ers Brock Purdy combined for on Sunday. Though they did serve up a collective 5 interceptions while also combining for a trio of touchdown runs. Gets the job done, I guess. Now we get to number 1, because 1 is the number of undefeated teams remaining. The Chiefs elevated 6-0 on the same day Minnesota Vikings lost for the first time this season, as I alluded to before. Having had number 1, we are on to number 1. Career touchdown receptions by Green Bay Packers running back Josh Jacobs, who finally recorded one on Sunday. A first-round pick for the Oakland Raiders 5 years ago, Jacobs' 211 catches without a touchdown were the second most to start a career. Before breaking the hex, Jacobs had the most grabs in league history without a touchdown. So they were absolutely hammering this stat on today, which you would, because that is beyond mental. 211.
It does seem crazy when, like, you think that an awful lot of, like, teams do tend to sort of, like, obviously play with the guy. Well, obviously, the quarterback will hand the ball off, but the amount of times you just see that little sort of, like, drop back, like, quick, like, pass out to the running back who's just, like, next to the next to the quarterback, and then, like, the lanes are set and he just walks in the end zone. So it does seem baffling that he's done that
It's so
times, and he's never found the end zone. That is crazy.
Weird. Oh, my days. Yeah. Anyway, 2, average number of yards, Cleveland Browns back Nick Chubb managed on 11 carries. In his first game in more than a year after suffering his latest gruesome knee injury. No matter in a lost season for his team, Chubb, who also scored his first touchdown since 2022 regular season final, is a huge silver lining and inspiration to teammates and fans who are going to need some in the coming months. 3, the number of Browns to throw at least 10 passes Sunday. The first time one team had as many players in the game in 16. With quarterback 1, Deshaun Watson's season apparently over after he went down with Achilles injury, the Browns will move forward with Jameis Winston and or Dorian Thompson-Robinson. 4 is the number of quarterbacks to post a passer rating of at least 140.0 in 3 consecutive games. Jared Goff joining their ranks Sunday in the Detroit Lions statement-making 31-29 defeat of the Minnesota Vikings on Sunday. The Lions moving into first place atop the hyper-competitive NFC North by handing the Vikes their first loss of the season. I know I've already said it, but 5 number of seasons it took Cincinnati Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow to notch his first win in Cleveland. Again, that seems mental. And finally, for me, 6 number of consecutive losses by the New England Patriots after getting smoked by the Jacksonville Jaguars on Sunday. It's the Patriots' longest skid in 31 years. I was talking to Stats Mistress about this, saying I listened to a podcast that's hosted by a hardcore Patriots fan. And they always talk about the Patriots had like that 20-year spell of just that evergreen sort of 20 years. Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, blah, 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 blah. All those Super Bowl wins, all those trips to the Super Bowl, this many out of this many, and blah, 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 blah. However, he's a man of, few years on me and you, and talks about the time before Tom Brady and Bill Belichick and how truly awful it was to be a New England Patriots fan. Talks about going to the stadium and turning up on the day to see if you can get a ticket, to walk in and basically pick where you want to sit because the place was empty, because nobody wanted to go and watch them because they were so terrible. So, as a hardcore Patriots fan, they're a bit like, it's just a return to form for us. We had our time. Now it's time to go back to the way things were.
I guess the weird thing with the Patriots is obviously the fact that, for like people that are sort of like from our sort of generation, you just know them as that sort of team from like the early 2000s that was the dynasty, and then obviously they had the sort of the spell in the doldrums, and then they had that team from the mid 2010s again that was basically a dynasty. But prior to that early 2000s team, obviously they'd made the Super Bowl in, I think, at least 2 or 3 times or something like that, and they'd lost every one. So they did have like pedigree of being a team that had made it to the dance. They were almost like Bills-esque in the fact that they'd gone multiple times and never won it. But obviously now turn that into the six that won. But to get us back to the stats, I will continue here with stat number 7. And 7 is the number of interceptions thrown by Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers, putting him on pace for a career worst 17, after he served up 2 more in Sunday night's loss to Russell Wilson and the fieldsless Pittsburgh Steelers. Number 8 is the number of sacks racked up by the Eagles in their 28-3 walkover against the Giants, who were without injured left tackle Andrew Thomas. 9 is the number of consecutive games Los Angeles running back Kyren Williams has posted a rushing touchdown, tied for the 4th longest streak in the NFL since 2000. But it's only halfway to Hall of Famer LaDainian Tomlinson's run between the 2004 and 2005 seasons. Williams found the end zone twice in Sunday's defeat of the Las Vegas Raiders. 10 is the number of completions by Houston Texans QB C.J. Stroud in Sunday's 24-22 loss to the Packers. It was Stroud's fewest number of connections in a game he started and completed in what's otherwise been an illustrious season and a half for the budding star. His 86 passing yards were also a career low. 11 is the jersey number of Jaguars wide receiver Parker Washington, whose 96-yard punt return for a touchdown in London set a new Jags record. It was also the longest scoring play in the history of the NFL's International Series and the first punt taken to the house on foreign soil. The NFL to get a first time ever stat into their midst, isn't it?
We usually leave that to the getting over crew.
Yeah, that definitely usually has a more wrestling flavour to it. That is the end of the numbered stats, but we do have some more. Wide receiver Amari Cooper scored a touchdown in his first game with the Buffalo Bills in their 34-10 defeat of the Tennessee Titans. Not only did he score the touchdown, I believe if you go back and watch the game footage, he looks over to his other receiver for the route that he needs to run, as he didn't know where he was supposed to be going. And then I think you see the guy. He sort of looks over. You see the guy just go, or something like that. And then obviously he's in the end zone. So obviously Mr. Cooper should have done a portion of his game check to his colleague. Marcus Mariota won Sunday's battle, in inverted commas, of quarterback has-beens as the Washington Commanders dismantled the Andy Dalton-led Carolina Panthers 40-7, meaning they hardly missed injured rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels. Mariota's 205-yard, 2-touchdown passing day was his best since he was benched by the Falcons late in the 2022 season. That is obviously the season that was covered in the quarterback documentary released by Netflix, which if you've not seen, is well worth a watch. And my final stat, and the final stat of the week, no less, Eagles running back Saquon Barkley, who reminded the Giants just how good he is by rushing for 176 yards, the second highest total of his career, despite resting late in the game. 187 total yards was 68 more than the Giants had in total. Did you see the video that cropped up where Nick Sirianni went over to Barkley on the bench and told him that he was, I think it was something like 14 yards or so off his career total, like his career best? And he was like, do you basically want to go back into the game to get the sort of the yards to post your career best? And he said no, let the younger guys or let the sort of the second stringers get their fill and stuff like that. So fair play to the guy. A very
Absolutely.
Barry Sanders or LaDainian Tomlinson-esque approach to it. Not about the glory for himself. He's much more about the team and winning, which is definitely the mindset you like to see in the NFL.
It is. It also sent a clear message at the same time. It was very much I don't need to do that to them. I've done this. Was that your last stat?
That is the stats.
Amazing. So that officially closes the book on week 7. What we have now to look forward to is our week 8. A little bit of chit chat around those upcoming games, which, as I already mentioned, look delightful and slightly easier pickings this week, I feel. Although maybe there's too much to pick from. We'll go through all of those in just a moment, but technology means that we have to recharge the hamster. You won't notice it. We will barely notice it, and we will be back in a moment. My word, just like that, we're back. It's almost like it never happened, even though it did happen.
Seamless.
Yeah, at least it will be when I've finished editing it. My favorite is that there's a particular podcast. I won't mention who, like us, has to have a break every now and then, just because it's quite frankly it's exhausting. It's almost like work, and it's always that thing that, like, at certain times a year, their first half is like in the light, and their second half is in the dark. It's like, there we go. Either you were podcasting really long the first time, or you had a substantial break in the middle. Anyway, when I had to talk about the ins and outs of the podcast world, we had to talk about the ins and outs of the American Football League world thing. Week 8. I know I keep mentioning it, but there's some juicy games is one way to put it, I think. I know for a fact that I sent you my predictions. I know that you were going to look into see if you could wrangle up some guest predictions, and I imagine they're all written down in a book. So, take her away, sir. What have you got for us?
The book is both in front of me and it is filled with predictions by not just myself, not just yourself, but this week's guest in the shape of my lovely wife, Mrs. Amy Williams. Well played to her for stepping up and gifting us the inside of her brain from a American football perspective. Now, obviously, since week 5, we've been having certain teams on bye. So as it stands, 4, 8, 10 teams of the 32 have had their bye. The NFL have chosen week 8 to apparently stop, and they've just randomly stopped the byes. Who knows why? So we have all 16 games to pick from this week. All 32 teams in action, 16 games, 16 picks, 16 delicious points on offer to provide the one true point that's being that everyone's looking for in the predictions this week. And our first game of week 8 sees the previously undefeated Minnesota Vikings traveling to Los Angeles to take on the Rams. Now, even though the Vikings did lose last time out and the Rams got back on the win column last time out, we have all 3 of us backed the Vikings to get the win here. So it's a clean sweep across the board. Vikings to bounce back with a stellar victory. We move to the Sunday slate of games, and we start with the Baltimore Ravens at the moribund Cleveland Browns. No great shock here that we've all taken the Ravens. I'm obviously assuming that none of us are thinking that the Browns, now without Deshaun Watson, who tore his Achilles in the outing against the Bengals, we're probably working off the presumption that the Browns probably won't be playing much better, even without their quarterback. It seems to be a large portion of their problem.
The sound probably wasn't the Achilles tear. It was probably the sound of 2 shotgun blasts going off, put behind the ear of the Browns organization from a football perspective. They can get themselves down next to the Carolina Panthers and have themselves a jolly good time of probably not winning another game this season. So yeah, we can absolutely look forward to every time a decent team goes up against one of those 2 teams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see, to say the least. So, our third game, we see the Tennessee Titans at the Detroit Lions, and you'll all be shocked to hear we've all taken the Detroit Lions. Next up, we have the Indianapolis Colts at the Houston Texans, and we've all taken the Texans. Next up, we have the Green Bay Packers at the Jacksonville Jaguars. We are all backing the Packers in that one. We then have the Arizona Cardinals traveling to Miami to take on the Dolphins, and this is our first difference of opinion across the board. Myself and Mr. Cook have picked the Cardinals, but Mrs. Williams sees something in the Dolphins and their potential decision to have Tua Tagovailoa back under center.
I looked at this game and I went, Tua's had some time off. He's going to be rested up to a degree. Obviously, I don't want to go too much into the other things. It just is what it is. He could come out and just be throwing absolute bombs downfield and just getting points on the board. The first games back are strange beasts. And purely off the back of that reason, I was like, I don't see this week being their week, unfortunately. I'm happy to be wrong. I'd love to see Tua come back to full strength. I'd love to see the Miami Dolphins return to where they were. Probably more like last season rather than, this season. Obviously, they've been decimated by injuries, so there's that. But yeah, that was my thinking.
Yeah, I think it's one of those ones, isn't it, where the Dolphins have looked pretty awful without him.
Yeah, it's
so
weird.
You'd imagine they'll look better with him, but will they be that much better with him? I'm not. I'd want to see another week or so to be fully convinced. Let's put it that way. Next up, we have the New York Jets at the New England Patriots, and we've all taken the Jets on that one. Tell you something. If you were a Jets fan now and you're just thinking we're in a bit of a slump, could you ask for a better opponent to be coming into town or you to be going to a better opponent with the New England Patriots? Really? Next up, we have the Atlanta Falcons traveling to Tampa Bay to take on the Buccaneers. We have another difference of opinion here, but both myself and Mr. Cook have taken the Buccaneers, whereas Amy has taken the Falcons on that one. We have the Eagles at the Cincinnati Bengals. Myself and Mr. Cook on the Eagles. Amy has taken the Bengals on that one. Saints at Chargers. Myself and Andy on the Chargers, even though they let me down for a clean sweep last week. So, they're on the shit list. Amy has taken the Saints. So, don't really know what she saw in that, that amazing loss to the Broncos in the week.
Honestly, the Saints are another one. The Saints were doing well. And then they weren't.
Very strange.
I was
very strange. Next up, we have the Buffalo Bills at the Seattle Seahawks. Myself and Andy on the Bills. Amy fancies the Seahawks, that one. That could be my sneaky pick for game of the week, that one. Two decent teams in, fairly decent form. Obviously, the Seahawks managed to get, they managed to arrest their losing slide at the weekend. So, let's see with that one. We have the Bears at the Commanders. Myself and Mr. Cook on the Commanders. Amy has taken the Bears on that one. That one's interesting for me because obviously it'll all depend on whether Jayden Daniels plays or not. But even then, Marcus Mariota didn't look all that bad when he came in at backup. So
yeah, absolutely.
Next up, we have the Carolina Panthers at the Denver Broncos. Myself and Mr. Cook, both on the Broncos. Amy has taken the Panthers on this one. Now, wouldn't surprise me, let's put it that way, if the Panthers did get a win here. Mainly because I think there is possibility that Bryce Young is... Yes, so Bryce Young is scheduled to start again. So, wouldn't surprise me if it was one of those situations where team rallies behind the rookie quarterback. And it's one of those, they probably shouldn't get the win, so they probably will, if that makes sense. And they're going to get at least one more win before the end of the season. So, will it come in this game? The Broncos are the Broncos, aren't they? They tend to sort of like lose games they should at random times. Next up, we have the Kansas City Chiefs, and I believe they will be with their newly acquired wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins going up against the Las Vegas Raiders. Surprise, surprise, it's a clean sweep for the Chiefs. The Sunday night football sees the Dallas Cowboys traveling to San Francisco to take on the 49ers. And even despite all the 49ers injury woes, with Brandon Ayuk now on injured reserve and out for the season with a torn ACL, Deebo Samuel battling pneumonia, of all things, and George Kittle apparently day-to-day with his current issues, we have all backed the San Francisco 49ers to get the win there, mainly because who can ever trust the Dallas Cowboys? And the Monday night football sees the New York Giants traveling to Pittsburgh to take on the Russell Wilson now-led Pittsburgh Steelers. And shock horror, we have all backed the Steelers to get the win. Now, for those of you who were making notes and keeping count of that one, that does mean that myself and Mr. Cook have picked all 16 games exactly the same. Which means we now find ourselves in a position where we need a tie break. So I look back in the book, and in week 2, we also had a situation where we both picked the 16 games in the exact same manner. So what we did in that situation was we picked a game. It was the Monday Night Football. It was the Falcons-Eagles game, and we basically both said how many points we thought would be in the game as a total, as a whole. So I would suggest we do the same thing. We pick a game that we think could be either high scoring or should be down as like one of the games of the week, and we basically pick the points total for the game. My personal opinion would be the Cowboys 49ers game. Don't know how you feel about that.
Go for it.
So total points scored in the Cowboys at 49ers game. I will let you have a moment to think. And then we will give our guesses on that one. So let's have a look. Cowboys at 49ers. Have we had it? I know we were playing the Chiefs last week, so obviously that's a bit of an anomaly.
It's one of those things that I do the pick'ems each week, and the pick'ems makes you pick in case of a tiebreaker score situation. So I always put the same score down, no matter what it is, no matter what the game, because I feel it's the definitive combined score. It can allow for a big one way and a small the other, a 50-50, one pips the other at the post, etc., etc. So I'm going to use that number as it's almost a lucky number, meaning definitely won't come out. So my number is 56.
5-6.
5-6.
I will be going for 47, as I believe I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to go about 25-22 as my final score. So that is our tiebreaker. That will determine whether or not myself or Andy gets the win in the event that our 16 games are all correct and Mrs. Williams doesn't in fact win the week for the guests. All that leaves us to do is to make our 4 selections each for our side bet picks. So, obviously, as we discovered from week 7, I am still in the lead by 1 point, 21-20. So, it's up to Mr. Cook whether he wants to go first or put me into bat to select first. Up to you, Mr. Cook.
I will go first. And obviously, I've said there's some. I mean, realistically, there's some absolute no-brainers. But unlike pretty much every week up till this point, I think we're spoiled for choice, and you just there going, "Oh, well, like for example, not that I'm definitely picking this one, but like Monday Night Football game, for example, you like, I think we can see what's going to happen there. There's always that thing where I don't want to be too obvious, but at the same time, we're playing for some serious pointage here. So let's take the Kansas City Chiefs to beat the Las Vegas Raiders. I am not just focusing on the 6-0 Kansas City Chiefs, but everybody's got to lose one.
Absolutely. I will start us off with the Detroit Lions at home, the Tennessee Titans. And I'll follow that up with the Denver Broncos at home to the Carolina Panthers.
I was going to take that as my first pick, purely off the back of the fact that it's my first pick week in, week out. Whoever's playing the Panthers. So it's almost like the opposite of a bye week. It's a free week. But I think you Jedi mind tricked me on that. So, as my second, I will take the Baltimore Ravens to beat the Cleveland Browns.
Furiously scouring the games now to work out what the best premier selection is.
Actually, yeah, I'm going to take the Pittsburgh Steelers to beat the New York Giants. So, having said it before, I'm going, I'm picking this one. I've now picked it.
The smart pick. So that leaves me with two selections to make. One of which I'm going to take the Green Bay Packers.
Oh, you cheeky monkey.
Yeah, I'll take the Houston Texans to beat the Colts, which leaves you with free run over the remaining 9 games.
I know we've talked about this team a little bit this evening. Obviously, we're talking about them. I feel like we've talked about this team quite a bit through the season so far. Looking at their record, looking at the question of how will they bounce back, I think really outline not a fluke, but an actual genuine team. The Minnesota Vikings need to come back and beat the Los Angeles Rams. So, Minnesota, I'm rolling my dice with you.
So, to clarify, that means that Andy's 4 selections are the Kansas City Chiefs at the Las Vegas Raiders, the Baltimore Ravens at the Cleveland Browns, the Pittsburgh Steelers at home to the New York Giants, and the Minnesota Vikings at the Los Angeles Rams. 3 road teams, 1 home team. My 4 selections are the Detroit Lions at home to the Tennessee Titans, the Denver Broncos at home to the Carolina Panthers, the Green Bay Packers at the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Houston Texans at home to the Indianapolis Colts. I've gone the opposite there. I've gone for 3 home teams and 1 road team. That brings us to the end of Week 8's predictions and this week's NFL podcast.
So there we go. It's a fantastic thing. We have gone through last week's games. We've gone through the stats, gone through how our respective picks fared. We have brought you this week's games, no buys. I was going to mention how the no buy thing is. Personally, I felt that the buys came in early. Always feels weird. I feel like you're supposed to get like 7, 8 weeks under your belt before you start seeing any buys. I think looking at it, it's potentially to do with the increased number of international games. And obviously you've got teams that are traveling there and back, etc. So back to the full boat. We have predicted those games. We've got guest predict. We've got side bet locked in. It's done. It's dusted. We are ready to rock and roll. Are you ready to rock and roll? If you think these guys, they've got a podcast, but let's face it, they don't know what they're talking about. It's not like they're getting clean sweeps week after. Interesting. If you still think you can take us on, here's what we are prepared to offer you. Send us your predictions by going to the website, thecookiecast.com. Click that email button. It will auto-generate an email. List out just put the team of the two teams you think will win. Just put the name. Bang, 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 bang. 16 times. Click that send button. If it gets to us before the first game kicks off, you will go in the book. Once in that book, you have the chance to play against myself, Williams, and the lady wife. And if you either equal or in fact beat us, like I say, it's not like we're in clean sweeps all over the place. We will send you a fantastic NFL prize. Any NFL fan's going to look at that and go, that's a fantastic NFL prize right there. They're going to show their friends, their family, their loved ones, and their teammates. So, the offer's there. All you have to do is take it. As always, it's my job to thank my always glamorous co-host, Miss Williams. Thank you very much to you, sir, for joining me, taking these lovely people through the amazing world of American football. Thank you to Mrs. Williams for throwing some guest picks our way. Thank you to the Stats Mistress for doing stats. Thank you to Nate Davis for doing the heavy lifting. Thank you to you for listening, watching, and being part of this. Join us next week where we will go through the games we've just predicted. Obviously, we'll let you know how you did in your predictions and whether you beat us and whether you won a prize. And okay, I'll let you know a little secret. I've got 2 or 3 super special secret guests lined up this season. I might pull the trigger on one of them. I might pull the trigger on. The only way we'll find out for sure is by tuning in next week. So, thank you very much, and we will see you next time. Until then, tatty byes.
So there you go, what do you think of that? Another one done. Another week of games gone. Another week of games to come. I was very much serious. If you want to put yourself up against us, maybe even win yourself a little prize, tell you what, I'll sweeten the deal. Send your predictions. Even if you don't beat us, just send your predictions. You will get an NFL-based prize. How about that? Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for making it this far. If indeed you made it this far, if you did, please consider like, share, subscribe and comment. Leave a review where you can leave a review and check out the website. That's obviously where you'll be sending your predictions from. It's thecookiecast.com. There we have social media links and an email button. And that way you can get in touch with us. That is it for this one. Until next time, I'm going to say bye, and I'll see you then.
Thanks for listening. If you like this episode of CookieCast, please like, share and subscribe.